Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our October PMI webinar. This is a new thing that we're going to be doing actually quarterly with our friends at Current. Big ups to Mike and Karen there for collaborating with us on this. So these, you'll know these are Current collaborations because the series is called Innovate with Current. And for this one in particular, we actually were going to start this in January, but then Tom pitched us this idea, and it was so good that we said to Current, "Hey, maybe we could do this. We start 3 months early. This is a good one." And that's because we're going to be talking about digital revenue. And like I said, Tom pitched us this. It was a brainstorm coming out of PMDMC. I don't want to steal his thunder, so I'll let him give more of the provenance to you. But before I hand it off to him, he'll do introductions to our panel. I want to also just thank Nita for their constant support with the promotion and helping us keep the Your Learning community active. And also thanks to Amber and to David, my co-conspirators here with PMI. And I think with that, that ticks all my little boxes. So November, I will say this, we'll mention this again at the end. But November's webinar, we're going to be talking about station and community collaboration, and our test case is going to be the game that Amber and I co-led for our stations called Powwow Bounce. So we'll be able to catch that in our November webinar. And that was my last piece of housekeeping. So with that,
remind them to use the chat, Chad.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yes, please also use the chat. I guess that's true. Don't for Q&As for those who are new to these webinars, we just do everything in the chat. So please put your questions in there. Do actively communicate there. Our panelists are going to be monitoring it when they're not speaking to you with their presentations. So, all right. Did I get it all, guys? Ready to go? All right, Tom, handing it off to you, buddy.
Thanks, Jed. Hi, folks. I'm Tom Davidson. I'm pleased to see lots of friends and former coworkers over there in the participant box. I have ping-ponged between commercial media and public media for the last 35 years or so at places in the commercial world like Tribune and Gannett, and at PBS Digital, PBS North Carolina, and consulting gigs at a bunch of stations. I landed here at Penn State about a year ago in a teaching role best described as being a mad scientist. And as I was pulling together some of my first lectures, I started coming across numbers and examples that made it clear just how dramatic of a change we've seen in the last decade in audience behavior. And I realized our friends in commercial broadcasting, well, they know things and act on them that we may not know. That dovetailed with some stuff that I heard at PMDMC over the summer that really led to this webinar that we're doing today. We've got some terrific guests. I'll talk more about them in a moment, but thank you to Tyler Smith from Tanager Digital, Christina McPhillips from Carl Bloom Associates, and Alex Curley, product consultant who used to be at NPR and now runs semipublic.co. We all wanted to talk a little bit about how changing audience creates challenges, but also opportunities for our fundraising efforts. That was the genesis of this discussion, which Chad, PMI, Nita, and Current are happy to host, and we thank them for that. What I want to do to tee things up at the beginning is talk about just some overview stats, then bring these other smart folks in to talk about what your station can do right now to improve the fundraising prospects in 2026 and beyond. And I want to start on our first slide with a question. What were you watching in 2015? There were great scripted hour-long dramas, NCIS, mediocre sitcoms. Okay, you can tell I never watched and never quite got The Big Bang Theory, reality TV. And next slide, please. In our world of public media, of course, we were celebrating the last season of Downton Abbey premiering. In that 2015 television series, half of the broadcasts that were most watched in prime time that year were some form of episodic television. Yes, the other half were, of course, sports events like the Super Bowl. You can see the source and you can click the link when you download the deck later. But Variety, every year, the trade publication, every year looks not at the season-long ratings, but at the individual broadcasts. And they compile a list of the 100 most viewed broadcasts that year. And in 2015, if you look just at the top 20, Half of the top 20 shows were one or another form of episodic television. Next slide, please. We've got The Blacklist. We've got NCIS ranking up 20, 30 million viewers. One more, please, Tyler. Which leads to a question. That was a decade ago. Last year, the number of episodic broadcasts in the top 50, you just got a hint. 0, none, zilch. Next one, please, Tyler. Yes, 75 of the top 100 last year were live sports, something PBS no longer plays in. Most of that was the NFL. We had the Summer Olympics. Okay, there were some other special events like the Oscars, and it was a presidential year, so the debate scored high. Next animation, please. The best episodic piece of television last year, next one, please, was an episode of Tracker that came in at number 70 in the top 100. That's the television world. The story is not much different in the world of audio. Terrestrial AM/FM radio now gets barely 1/3 of that share of ear from consumers. And in fact, consumers now spend more time listening to streaming music like Spotify or Pandora and YouTube, especially for video podcasts, than they do listening to traditional AM/FM radio. This is a group of digital innovators. We kind of know this stuff, but these data points are stark to me. They talk about how severely our audience for terrestrial broadcast has eroded in the past decade to shift to these on-demand platforms. Next one, please, Tyler. It's gone so far that our commercial brethren are running as fast as they can from the phrase broadcasting and broadcasters. You have organizations like Comcast, NBC, putting some of their best content on the streaming service, not on NBC. Next one, please, the animation. You've got, to combat YouTube and Spotify, you have the world's largest radio group. Next one, please. Clear Channel. I'm sorry, that's what they used to be called. They're now called iHeartMedia. The word radio isn't even in their name anymore, even though they literally own more radio stations than anybody else in the world. There's a message there. Next one, please. In our world, yes. Animation, please, Tyler. Our content is available on demand through services like Passport and NPR One. We're getting, as the Contributor Development Partnership reports in Current every month, more and money through digital channels. And this is great. Next one, please. But an awful lot of our digital giving is still tied to on-air pledge. Next one. To the point of their, next one, please, even being jokes about the average age of our listeners and viewers. Next slide, please. We've seen a wonderful bump in donations due to something really bad happening, the rescission. Before that, though, we were raising slightly more money from slightly fewer people, getting more dollars per donor, but from a universe of donors that was getting smaller and getting older every year. Like all of you, I'm grateful for the bump we're seeing since the rescission vote. We'll talk about this with Alex a little bit later. We've got to ask ourselves a couple hard questions. One, will that bump last? And next slide, please. And one more. If it doesn't last, what are we going to do about it? Since our audiences have shifted to these on-demand digital platforms, how can we make sure that our fundraising efforts are keeping pace? This is where the tie to PMDMC came in. At PMDMC, I got to sit in on a session led by Tyler and Christina that I thought was fantastic, talking about experiments and efforts and tests to raise money from digital audiences that may not ever tune into us on broadcast. Tyler, who's at Tanager Digital, is going to talk about some of the work he's done with a variety of stations in our world. Christina, who works across the nonprofit landscape helping to raise money, is going to offer some terrific examples, yes, of work that's been done with public media stations, but also looking and comparing us with the rest of the nonprofit landscape. And finally, Alex is going to talk with us about some of the experiments he has ginned up in a hurry to help raise money and offer some guidance and examples on how you might be able to do the same thing at your station. I was blown away by the session at PMDMC, and I've been blown away as we've had some of our planning sessions for this. I was joking a few minutes ago, if I wasn't hosting and teeing up this one, I would have signed up as an attendee. Let's get to the good stuff. Tyler, take us away, please.
Thank you very much, Tom. What a wonderful and resounding intro that was. I appreciate it, and I hope I can atone for navigating your slides for you. Thank you very much. Tyler Smith, the principal and founder of Tanager Digital. I am here to contextualize Tom's presentation and his core points to answer the biggest question of what happens next in public media. As the context has been shared, donations are up, but what happens next year? The answer is pretty clear if you haven't understood it already. Digitizing fundraising is the response we have. If you don't believe me, right, believe the data that the great opportunity for public media is bringing its investment past the point of diminishing returns to keep pace with its competing organizations. This is from M&R last fiscal year, that public media trails by orders of magnitude the investment that similar organizations make. I want to call out specifically that when we look at this, which is the amount of reinvested money that comes in from digital, back into digital, the smallest organizations are the ones that spend the most. Now, what does underinvestment in digital cause? Well, you're not being seen online. Your organization, your station, in the absence of making the decision to invest your resources, your people, your money, results in things like, is your content on social media actually being seen? It's not. You have 10,000 followers, probably 200 of them see your posts. When you had your CEO or your general manager ask and solicit donations in the face of recession not too many months ago, do you want to be the one to tell them that, well, we emailed 55,000 people, only 800 actually saw it? How many searches for your station online are actually being converted? In answering these, we have to look to commercial media, as Tom alluded to. What do they know? What do they do that we do not? Well, the answer is pretty simple. They invest in the means of distribution on digital channels. They use always-on campaigns to stay present from now until next year with the prospects who are interested in continuing the conversation. In the absence of doing so, we have cold audiences that are much less receptive statistically and intuitively to the outreach that we're using to extol our mission. Finally, these organizations use modern technology. We'll talk a lot about algorithmic targeting here. And these organizations do so without relying on antiquated, outdated work that is manual and does not respond to the moment of having reduced teams and reduced budgets as we enter a new fiscal cycle. To underscore this, graph on the left, I think Tom best explains the phenomenon. The audience is declining, but where are they going? The chart on the right, data from the Wall Street Journal. The biggest and most capable organizations, public and private, are following their audiences on digital. This is inversely and directly where the audience is and where that investment is being made by organizations, mission-oriented and otherwise, that are making the right decisions about where to find, converse with, and convert their audience. What does this look like? What does streaming look like for public media stations? This is a campaign from Seattle. This is a 30-second, very high polish commercial that promotes the mission, that shows off the organization's content. I won't play it now. It's really strong examples, I think, on our website. We placed this for 2 months, May and June, on the best performing streaming channels. Recognizable names: Paramount, Tubi, NBC. The top 25 would be recognizable. And some quick data, if you just look at the left for a minute, despite the red box, that for a $12,000 investment, it certainly may seem high for some stations. In 2 months, May and June of this year, we reached 137,000 households. It's only 9 cents a household. How does that compare to direct mail? What would it cost to send direct mail to 137,000 people? What would it cost to talk to them every single week? When we look at results, immediately at the start of the fiscal year, the rescission drive, the fall drive, this is July 1 to September 30, we see 6,400 is immediately recovered. We can measure that from Google Analytics. We can see how they started their journey from connected TV, CTV, how they ultimately converted through other means, whether they found us on Google, whether they saw a Facebook ad, whether they just came to our website to stream after they heard about us. And we say it's only 50% being returned, but here's what I ask. If 55% is recovered immediately, and we say non-clickable format, what we mean is no one can click a TV commercial, they still were able to come back and ask yourself, is your station's life cycle for donors from first contact to first contribution, is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? What about 5 weeks or 5 months? By increasing the quality and the quantity of touch points between the first contact into the spring and the solicitation for support in the summer, we were able to immediately see this return. Another brief example I just want to talk about is work we did with APM Studios. This is video insertion on YouTube, right? Just short format videos. This is YouTube videos, very familiar, but by being very focused and very thoughtful in the targeting, by leaning into the algorithm, by saying who's going to do a better job of identifying our donors, psychography or demography. It's the former. Now, by identifying the folks most interested in this content, want us to look at the right, we got a lot of people to the website, or to the channel, I should say, and that's great. We got what we paid for. When you make an investment, you should get people back to your website. But what we saw in addition to getting the people that we paid to visit our website and our channel, was that we had a 34% increase in residual organic. That's a fancy way of saying a whole bunch of people elected, a full third and then some, to come back to our content after seeing our content promoted to them. And that's pretty easy to visualize, because when we go to the YouTube app, as an example, and we seek out content, perhaps you're looking for a baseball highlight for a certain player that we typically have not behaviorally sought out previously. What happens the next morning, right? When we watch content after search it, we see a video at the top of our feed that is either that player or it's from the channel that had the highlights. That is what is happening here. When we connect with folks on the social channels, on digital channels that lead them to the content they want to find that resonates with them, they are compelled to continue to come back and create more organic and free touch points. We were also able to say that there was incredible insight into who and where the prospect consumes. It was eye-opening that over half of all viewers did so, and this is YouTube, on their TV, not on their phone or their tablet, on their TV. It is fully replacing the broadcast TV, the broadcast on TV. Now, we talked as well about how do we use this technology to find who our donors are. We don't just want to talk to them. We want to make small, focused investments, as little as $50 at the bottom, we'll see, to identify the folks most interested in our mission. Now, for $500, it's a station we worked with, they reached 70,000 people. It's pretty incredible. A third of the people that saw the ad either commented, liked it, shared it, engaged in the comments. 8%, 6,000 people roughly, actually clicked through to the website. Think about this. We are promoting our local news content for a PBS station, the short form video of our most popular shows. The folks that are interested in are going to find us. Those who click and stay engaged are our donors. This tells us exactly who they are, right? This isn't third-party data. So the guy from Portland, Oregon is behaving like the guy from Portland, Maine. That's not the case. We know who's interested in us because they respond to our content. And not only are they responding to our content, they're starting the pathway to becoming a new donor with our organization. Just a quick look of what I mean specifically. I know it's sort of abstract. Consider an organization like this that has a following of probably 50,000 followers on Facebook. Compare this to what your organization is, what their engagement looks like. By making a small investment, look at the quality of engagement on this. This is tens of thousands of people that aren't just seeing a commercial, they're seeing social interaction. These folks will then be, we'd say, retargeted. We'd have follow-up interactions, a conversation over time with them that compels them and stays present throughout the year to then convert during our drives. Now, this is what an example of that system looks like. We put out our content to folks the algorithm deems are most interested and most likely to engage. We then stay present with brand advertising. Now, Christina's going to do a great job of showing some examples of this specifically. By retargeting the people who listen to our streams, by staying present with the folks who go to our website, by staying with new donors who are interested in our stuff on Instagram and Facebook. These are all automated solutions to stay present, to show off our mission in between drives for pennies, to keep the audience warm and continue to build the case for fiscal 26 and beyond. Some data from a partner station on the left is provided, the data of the first gift from digital. Recall the chart on the right. By implementing a system like this, by tying our wagon to, hitching our wagon, sorry, to the means of digital distribution, by simply showing up rather than feeling like we need to do a perfect job, by making a small organizational investment over time, we are attaching ourselves to where the audience is. That is a proven thing. If there's one thing that Tom's presentation should underscore, it's that the means to reaching these folks is pretty well proven. What is more important than the work is always the people, and that those of us in development and revenue roles, and I would say just take a look at this after the interest of time, siloing our work teams, right, is not the pathway to the result we want, especially in the face of limited resources. By having our revenue teams, our marketing and our membership align and conjoin, we are setting ourselves up for efficiency and economies of scale that will achieve the same returns that the private sector can. My closing thought here is that everyone lives online. Whether it's a first-time tip-level donor or a prospect, they, like the major giver who just gave your station $50,000 to $100,000, they have a Facebook or Instagram profile, they use a Google account, they stream certainly. Most importantly, they live a digital life where their ad experiences are normalized. Unlike junk mail, unlike emails that get sorted to spam, we are used to being advertised to online, and mission-driven content from our local station will send out against swimwear ads. To recap, this requires investment. We shared the data that proves that. We're so far before the point of diminishing returns. This is true for every station. By implementing more digital touch points, we're continuing the conversation, and we're collapsing our donor timeline from years to months and sometimes weeks. Technology tells us exactly who our donors are and is a better, more cost-effective investment than other means of demographic donor conversations. And finally, in addition to investing to meet our audience where they are, organizational alignment will multiply the results of your fundraising efforts. With that, I will turn it over to Christina, who will give us a little bit of a specific face on what I'm talking about.
Thank you, Tyler. So I'm here to be your practical gal, if you will, and kind of show you how you can apply a lot of these things to your own station. I think it's important to know that echoing a lot of things that Tom and Tyler have said, we're not abandoning the other ways that we're fundraising. I always like to tell this to the nonprofits we work with outside of the public media landscape. By asking you to do these things, we are not telling you to abandon anything else. So no fear. Let's talk about testing and trying new things. Small stations can be doing the things that I'm going to show you in a few minutes. And then This works for a lot of different sizes of teams. Ideally, your marketing and fundraising teams are going to function together to plan these things. The marketing team and even production teams may say something like, our initiatives and goals are these things. Our station goals are these things. And then the fundraising team is going to come in and say, here's how we're going to execute this for you. And really to highlight some of the things that Tyler said, when we are recommending that you do these digital campaigns, we're not saying you're not going to be cannibalizing your existing donors. You're really going to be finding new donors through these channels, different age groups potentially, but also keeping in touch with your current donors in the world that they live in, that online world that Tyler just finished talking about. We all have personalities online. So anyway, so let me walk through some practical tips and things that we've learned. Local storytelling really works. I'll show you some campaigns around that. Low barrier offers will get signups. So if you're looking for email addresses, something along those lines, you want more engagement, low barrier offers work. Retargeting is absolutely essential. So running a campaign online for many months will allow you to collect people, and then you turn on a campaign later on that's fundraising based. So always wanting to be gathering your audiences to retarget at a later time. Internal note, clear goals, get better results. Saying to each other, we understand that this digital campaign we're going to run is not fundraising based. That's not the goal. The goal is to get eyeballs on the content that we offer as a station. Great. Everybody is aligned in those goals. Keep going. And then finally, those really small budgets can definitely succeed. So next slide, I will go ahead and show you some local campaigns that we've run. And here's just a little, some little images. And you can look at these more closely when we send the deck out. Next slide, please, sir. So for a station that we work with in California, KPBS, they were promoting Radio Pledge. And we did a campaign on Google and Meta. You can see the budget was about $3,600. I would say in some cases that could be a large budget. So for certain stations that are listening today, don't be scared off by $3,600. Or I know Tyler was saying during his time, he ran a campaign of about $12,000 or $13,000. Please don't be scared off by those numbers. You do not have to be doing those campaigns of those sizes. So for this particular campaign, the results were about 250,000 impressions in that market. Great click-through rates. And then what I really want to highlight about this one is it's a small, well-targeted digital campaign. It takes your pledge messaging and your fundraising messaging off broadcast, off the air, and is really speaking to people where they are as they float around their day on their phone, on their computer, that kind of thing. Next slide. I love this one, and I think this one is indicative of what more stations should be doing. So IdeaStream Public Media took a podcast that they have that's also on YouTube, and we highlighted this for them, turned it into a campaign. So this is called Living for We. We spent $2,000 between April and September 2025, and we did it on Google, on YouTube, ran some meta ads. The goal, and this is what I said a moment ago, the goal is really to talk internally with station staff and say, what do we care about when we're doing this? What are our goals? Are we okay with that? The fact that this will not generate immediate revenue for us? Because as fundraisers, we so often think if it doesn't generate immediate revenue, it's not worth my time. And I think we're really talking about building future audiences here. So this one informed the audience that this podcast existed, that they should be paying attention to it, highlighted it. So it was increasing YouTube subscribers, engagement on the YouTube channel, increasing awareness of this podcast. 175,000 impressions, 25,000 video views, 11,000 YouTube subscribers. What I also love about this, if you can see in the pie chart, the orange, that's a 35 to 44-year-old audience. That's not something that you're going to be reaching in the mail or on traditional broadcast. That's a younger, different audience. And of course, they may not give right now, but we're laying the groundwork for future gifts. So Tyler, next slide. I love the local angle with this one. This is the Nashville PBS whiskey tasting. So I think one of the other things I like about this is the first year we did this with the station, they came to us and said, we need to turn something on right away to help sell tickets. And that's what you can be doing. You can start these campaigns and run very short campaigns for the course of 2 weeks or 3 weeks, something along those lines. But somewhere like Meta is a really beautiful place to sell a tangible item, to get someone to buy a ticket to something. So that would be something that I would encourage you to test out. So targeted ads, local event, people that are interested in something like whiskey, follow brands like that. Meta, the goal was to sell out the event, and they definitely did. These are very attractive ads, and I think they're eye-catching to people who are interested in this kind of thing. And then I think the final true example I will give is a campaign we're running right now for PBS North Carolina. It's a lead generation campaign, and the goal is to show people that PBS North Carolina's e-guide and Experience North Carolina newsletter is out and about, something that they should subscribe to. And so far, this campaign that's running right now has generated 6,000 new subscribers in the last couple of months, and we'll continue running. This is a really small offering, not very expensive. So on to the next slide. You can use this when the deck is sent to you. Think about building your own campaign. And here's a little brief for you. What's your local story? What's your station's goal? Is it awareness? Do you just want to make people aware that you have a podcast or a newsletter or something like that? First, make them aware of that, then get their information. Maybe they've signed up for the newsletter. Maybe they've subscribed to YouTube or listened to the podcast. And then many months later, if not years later, you could perhaps be asking them for donations. You're building the audience by showing them the value that you have. What platform do you want to use? With the Nashville PBS whiskey tasting, Meta was better to sell tickets, but in some cases, YouTube may be better for you. So figuring out what platform you want to use and then what budget you want to try. I think it's great for stations to say, we're going to allocate $10,000 this year to testing some of these things so that you can, as the guys are going to say and have said, you can try, test, succeed, fail, learn, keep going, but everybody is on board because you've allocated a certain amount of funds to do something like this, so it's not so scary. So with that, I will turn it over to Alex, and thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. In case you missed it, I brought some goodies to share with the class in the form of some demos. Please take a look at them while I'm talking if you like, and maybe you'll be able to spot some Easter eggs in one of them. I'm really glad to be going last because we talked a lot about the nitty-gritty of fundraising, but I wanted to zoom out a little bit and talk about the structure of fundraising in public broadcasting itself and the unwritten rules that we generally adhere to. Next slide, please. I picked two stations to pick on. Apologies if you're here and listening and watching this right now. But I have two sets of screenshots, right? One of them is from the week before Trump's inauguration in January. The other one is from 2 days ago. What's the difference between these two screenshots? The answer is obvious because I wrote it down at the bottom, but it's that we've started talking about the specific amounts that public media stations relied on the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the percentage of our budgets that we relied on the Corporation for Public Broadcasting for. That's something that we generally never really talked about before. I know that there's specific stations that have before, but I wrote fundraising materials for NPR for several years, and I facilitated custom promo requests in those years, and we would get about 1,000 custom promo requests. I don't ever remember dealing with a 30-second promo that talked about how much they relied on federal funding, but we didn't necessarily need to, right? Like it wasn't really it wasn't really an issue until our federal funding was at risk, and then it closed. But the point is that we had an unwritten rule, right? And we broke it, and it's working. Next slide, please. So you may know me from my Substack, Semi-Public. I do a lot of data analysis and analytics on the public media industry itself. I also launched Adopt a Station, which is a website that basically connects visitors with a public media station in need, right? It shows you exactly how much a station lost as a percentage of their revenue from the federal funding rescissions. There were several rules that I broke, or if you think about like the traditional unwritten rules of fundraising, right? There's several that I broke, right? I talked about federal funding. Usually you want to send people directly to giving. You want to remove any barriers to giving as possible. And this is an intermediary step, right? Not only is it an intermediary step, but there are hundreds of stations that you can give to through this website, right? And then there's not a traditional pitch, hook, and ask. It's kind of Adopt a Station is the hook and the pitch and the ask all in one. Next slide, please. So what does that mean, right? Like, I wouldn't be talking about Adopt a Station if it wasn't a success, right? We had 37,000 unique visitors in the first month. But the biggest number that I think about, I call it CTR. The biggest number that I think about, it's really conversion rate. If you look in our first 30 days, we were just shy of a 50% conversion rate. It was crazy. And Brenda, I see your note. There are definitely stations that did talk about federal funding before. Generally, it's not something that I saw a lot before, but I wanted to acknowledge your note. But adoptstation.org, first 30 days, nearly 50% of everybody who visited the website clicked on a link to a station or to a donation portal. That is an incredibly big number for a website like ours. And of course, interest has gone down a little bit after rescission package passed. This is a campaign that we ran at the beginning of October. You know, we had 2,400 unique visitors, probably not even coming close to the traffic that some of your station websites see, but there are two numbers on the right? 36% conversion rate, still very high, right? For a station. I don't know how many of those people actually donated, but those are people who generally weren't going into your site before, right? This may be a completely different audience than, you know, who would be giving on your on-air drives or through your website. The other big number is how much did I spend on adoptstation.org? How much have I spent on adoptstation.org up until this moment? 3 months later, it's the $7.50 that I bought, you know, the adoptastation.org domain name with. Next slide, please. So what does it matter, right? Adoptastation.org was an extremely low risk endeavor for me because I knew that I could host it for free, right? I knew that it was $7.50 to host it. And I also don't work for a public media station, you know, at the same time. So it's a little bit different for me, but it also filled a need that wasn't happening. I put some steps to capturing opportunity. There's nothing new here, but I want to talk about two of them really quick. Number one is the most important, right? Like if we're zooming out, right, and we're thinking about like changing the way that we fundraise, changing the structures that we use for fundraisers, it should be focused on what your audience is telling you, right? Like what posts are they clicking on Instagram? What pages are they visiting on your website? You should also be asking like what gaps exist, right? Like in our fundraising strategy, you should ask, what data am I missing, right? That would reveal that maybe would reveal a gap in our fundraising strategy. Of course, and then, identify those gaps when you see them. Scale risk, take the amount of risk that you want to take and then add 30%. And I really, I want to stress that you don't have to change, your on-air fundraising strategy. You don't have to change your traditional social media strategy, but I want to encourage people to take small scale risks. And I'll show you some examples of some small scale risks. But small scale risks that maybe break the rules, right? And in the slide before, I gave you permission. I gave you a doctor's note to take risks within reason and to conduct experiments. And if it goes wrong, then you can blame it on me with your boss. Okay, next slide. So that's the end of my slide. I created 3 examples for you all within 15 minutes while I was creating these slides. The reason why I made these is not to show this exact example, how you'd use this exact example in a fundraiser, but the idea of these examples, right? These are all extremely low lift. I made them for free. The first one is a donation wheel. Somebody spends it, they get a donation amount recommended to them. You could take it to like a live event, right? You could embed it in your website. There are bunches of different ways that you could do it. Number 2 is not about the donation page, but I don't know if you saw it. This donation page actually triggers the lamp behind me. And somebody figured it out. There you go. Somebody figured it out during Christina's presentation, which I apologize. I didn't mean to send the links out that early. But if you think about like physical interactivity between a digital interface that your station runs, right? And maybe people who are pitching live, right? Like maybe there's a light that goes off in your studio. Maybe there's a silly sound that plays. Maybe whoever's pitching right now has to use the word meow, right? In the next sentence. Stuff to make it more interesting, more interactivity. The last one is a pretty basic donation tracker, but that was easy to make. It's interactive. You can reset it. And again, it's for these 3 examples, it's about the idea of them. Like, how could you be inspired? Like, how could you add interactivity to your fundraiser? How could you add a new element that brings in a younger audience, right? Even if it's just a few hundred people, right? Scale the amount of risk that you're taking, building and deploying tools like these with how much you're willing to spend on it. That is my presentation, so I'm going to send it back to Tom.
Thanks, Alex. And I got to say, making the light blink, I was one of those people banging on it because I just can't. My friends who are in attendance will confess and tell you, I can't resist pressing a button if it makes a cute noise. There have been some interesting questions popping up in chat, and they've been answered a little bit over there, but I want to make sure that we don't just keep the conversation there. I want to pull it into this world. There was one that came from Nikki Bennett at Illinois Public Media, basically saying, well, what might I be able to do with as little as 200 or 300? And I want to ask both Christina and Tyler to talk about that. Illinois Public Media in a mid-size or smaller market in the central part of the state. What could you do with as little as $250? Tyler, you take it first, and then Christina.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. I want to say Christina answered correctly. The name of the game is Focus. There's some tactical stuff around making sure you're only on a few different placements in Meta. You don't want to be on Marketplace, for example. But I would really ask you what your goal is, because if you are in a drive, although you want to retarget your visitors, I'd recommend first not retargeting your visitors. Something I neglected to mention, and which I know Christina and I both shared, is you should be taking your donor lists, your actual donor lists of lapsed donors, of one-time donors, of prospects, and you should be targeting those folks. Because if you can get that CPM number I mentioned earlier, where $5, $10 reaches 1,000 people, if you have 10,000 lapsed donors, right? It's much less than $200 to $300. And the one other note I would say, this kind of is crazy to a lot of folks in public media, but when you pay for your search advertising, again, when you're doing like an on-air pledge drive, that's a great means, and I very quickly glossed over this, to convert broadcast demand to pennies conversion, right? Someone's searching for streaming WABC, KXYZ, something like that. Rather than going directly to the stream, they're just going to see, hey, we need your help. Now's the time to donate. Please throw us a few bucks, become a member for X dollars a month. That is the most efficient and most cost-effective way to do that. It has to be done from a paid account. Can't be done from a grant account. Lots of reasons for that, but that's why you have to pay $200 to $300, can do 10x or more on the return for that.
And Christina, I want to spin that question a little bit because you touched on this, but in my lizard brain, I wasn't quite sure if I was understanding it right. You seem to be talking about lead generation as a way of getting people who may be engaging with us on Facebook or YouTube or some podcast platform, basically to tell us who they are. Because one of my biggest frustrations as a programmer back in the day is I've got all these people watching my content on YouTube, and the bastards at Google and Alphabet won't tell me anything about who they are.
Yes.
Are you saying you have a way around that?
Yes, let them tell you who they are.
Yeah.
You have, to the stations out there, you have something really valuable. You have interesting content, you have a great mission. People should give their information, and a lot of times they will. If you've got a great newsletter, if you have a good podcast, a YouTube program, you can be doing things like app download campaigns. Download our app. You can retarget them again. They are your audience now. We know of a station that we worked with where they had tickets to, my goodness, Antiques Roadshow. Thank you very much. And all you had to do to be entered to win the tickets was give your email address and your information. These are things that your station already has that are valuable to the audience, that the audience will be willing to give their basic information to. And then that information is a lead, it is yours, and you can continue down the path of targeting those people again. Tyler, any thoughts on that?
I concur. I also was seeing the sudden wave of really thoughtful questions that I'm chomping at the bit to answer as well. But I agree. I think the thesis here in part is, and I'm going to try and answer a few of these in answering this, is folks are interested. They want you to reach out to them. And if you can do that consistently over time, in addition to other means of promotion, they will be willing to give you the information you're looking for. Whether that's contact info or something like that. By having that conversation with them over a sustained period of time, that will lead them to the point of conversion, whether it's information about themselves in the mid funnel or contributing later on. I don't want to jump the gun though, Tom. So
No, that's excellent. We got another question along the way. Brandy Miller from Kim asks what I think is an interesting and provocative question about retargeting. If we've got all those lapsed, well, we know who they are, we know where they live, we may or may not have their email address. Why not use those channels? What is it about some of these other digital channels that may be worth the investment? Either of you, take that one.
Yeah, could I briefly? That was the one I was like chomping at the bit. I think it's such a good question, and I feel I just want to say in our community, asking hard questions is like more important. This kind of Alex's point, like take the risk to ask questions that aren't precious and delicate and friendly. There's a few things going on here. The first thing is it's incredibly cost effective to do this, right? Compare 1,000 ads on digital where people are used to being advertised to. I showed data is $4.86. I'm sure Christina, $10, something like that.
Yes, right.
There's direct mail campaigns, which can be great for a very focused audience, but depending on where in their journey they are, it's prohibitively expensive, especially when you're asking us about $200 for a campaign. The other thing is incredibly important. This is the second core point I made. I made this in PMDMC when I had the opportunity to speak there, is all marketing, whether it's fundraising or whether you're the biggest company in the world, is you're trying to stay present with your core prospect. And the more sophisticated you are, the more leverage you have there. But one touch point, right? If you mail something, even if you just post something, if you send one email, that's great. consider like car shopping, right? Does anyone just wake up and say, dang, I need a new car. I've never heard of any cars in car shopping. I'm just going to walk to the lot and buy one. Not in 2025, where there's 16, whether it's Edmunds, whether it's CarMax, whether it's the local dealer, there's 16 videos. In one afternoon, I could have 600 touch points with 200 different brands. But the ones who get my business are the ones that are staying present with me with digital ads, with commercials, et cetera. That's why Nike pays $6 trillion a year approximately to talk to you and enforce their brand. They're not selling you anything. They're just saying, look, just do it. We're with athletes. And then they'll, at the very end of the year, look to promote their goods and services to you. So we need to stay present, make very focused investments, and that will increase the number of donations you get per dollar that you spend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with everything that he said. And so let's imagine that you have your CRM and you have 20 years worth of data and 200,000 lapsed names that haven't given in the last, 3 years to 20 or 30 years. You would have to do a lot of work to find out who is good to target through something like direct mail. You can email those people, of course, but that runs risks too. But with something like what we're talking about, you can import a lot of those names into the platform that you're using. Some of them will be matched, some of them won't be matched. And to Tyler's beautiful point, it costs a fraction of what it would cost to mail those people or to do modeling to find out if those donors are still good to use. So this is a really good way to harvest some of those audiences that you already have. Use what you already have. I think that speaks to the $200 and $300 available too. So anyway, I love it.
There were a couple questions that came in that I want to try and frame up this way. We've talked a little bit about top of the funnel marketing, building awareness, doing some lookalike campaigns, and you guys had some beautiful discussions about that back at PMDMC. We've talked about retargeting towards the bottom of the funnel. But Julie from KPBS asked an excellent question about what do we do with this surge of donations and of new donors we've seen since the rescission vote? How can we ensure that we remain engaged with those people so that 6 months, a year from now, we can get more money out of them, not just this one-time bump that Alex was talking about earlier? What ideas do you guys have in terms of sort of that ongoing below the funnel re-engagement?
Right. I think that actually, Tom, that and this is a good question, that starts to go back to what Christina and I were sort of just saying is you have a list, an actual list in a spreadsheet, and you only need to know first name, last name, email. That list of that donor, again, I mentioned lapse, but this is first time donors is a great pool to convert them. Then members that you want to get up to mid-level, identify them, upload them to your ad networks, right? If you have the means, right, and you're a larger major market station, that could be Meta, that could be Reddit, it could be YouTube. Say it's just Reddit, you're mid-market, you're lower, and like in terms of your budget. Just by simply having one touch point a week with them and showing them what you're doing, right? Promote your post to an audience that is that list. You're not, to be clear, and you saw some, you're not just saying contribute now. The point is, what is brand marketing? Is in between the drive for fall right now, which we're just wrapping up for most stations, and year end, you have maybe a month and a half till Giving Tuesday. What are you going to say to them? You have an opportunity to talk to them once a week, 6 to 8 times, and say, your gift is wonderful. Here's what we're doing with it. What happens at the end of the year, right? When they see what it's doing, they want to dump some tax dollars and say, wow, they've done great work with I've given. I trust them. I see their mission, and I'm going to contribute again for the next fiscal cycle.
Yes, and I really like that you've put sort of a timeline on it as you're creating this, visual, if you will. Okay, so we're talking about Giving Tuesday, or we're talking about year end, or something along those lines. Sit down with your team and say, what are the podcasts that we have that are interesting and of value? What are the shows that we have that are interesting and of value? Turn those into some ad campaigns that you're going to run. Show your audiences that you have great offerings, engage them, and tell, as Tyler has said, the things that you're doing with their money. But I think a lot of this goes back to sitting down and doing some really good planning prior to these timeframes. So meet with your teams, find your value, communicate it out.
We had some conversation going on in chat about loyalty programs. I don't know about you guys. I got 3 different loyalty cards for grocery stores in my wallet right now. Alex, I just think of these things from a product and technology point of view, like you do too. First, how difficult is it to tie in off a CRM's API and build in loyalty for frequent donations or other forms of interaction? And then Tyler and Christina, if we were to have systems like that, what's the value in sort of increasing that rate of engagement, that ongoing conversation with people?
I think not to make too sharp a point, but I think the real question is like, and this even goes back to getting an influx of new donors. It's like, what is the data about those new donors or your existing donor base telling you, right? Like, are these people who would appreciate a loyalty program? Because CRMs are incredibly capable. You could absolutely do it. And I bet there's a station out there that could find success doing it. But really the beginning question is like whether this is an audience that would support, right? Like a loyalty program. And when we're talking about like new donors, I'm assuming this may not be the right assumption, but generally on Adopt a Station, all the new donors, they're younger, right? Like they're millennial and younger. Even if you have a very basic setup for your donations, you can make, inferences and assumptions based on, the aggregate of those donors from the data that they give you. Like, when did they give? Did you get a bunch of donors during a specific time of day? Right? Do you ask for any identifying information when they're giving? What level are they giving at? Like, are all these donations like $5, $3, or are they bigger? Right. So when we talk about ideas like loyalty points, it's more about like, what is the data telling you? Will your audience appreciate it? And I think you should always take a risk, but you should be appropriately sizing that risk for your audience. And I am very interested to hear what Tyler and Christina say about that.
One of the things you were saying, sort of, I was reading some of the chat, but sort of made me think, we always, and this is kind of an offshoot of what you've said, we always say that people come in making their first ever gift in a way that's most comfortable for them, and they will probably continue to give through that channel. So I'm trying to think Tyler, I might throw it to you.
Yeah, no, I think we've kind of gone afield of it. I think I little above, I would say, the fundraising pyramid, but just in terms of member benefits, like my thing would be, wouldn't points effectively be, remember, like the more you spend, the more you get in your membership and your friends relationship anyway. The more swipes on my coffee shop card, the more free stuff I get. Nonetheless, if that's your system, the thesis that I had is you have an audience, cultivate your audience, distribute your content to your audience. And regardless, here's some question about this, is content that public media makes is great. That's why it's wonderful to be a vendor serving the space. The opportunity is how to make the investment shrewdly to have that content reaching the other 98% of people that aren't actually seeing it right now because they're fired up and they're ready. The way to 2026 success is by doing that thoughtfully.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
David threw out a question there aimed at Alex that reminds me of sort of the borderline nasty questions I used to throw out to my dev team and my product managers all the time. What David asked is there a prediction model? Anything that can kind of help to prove that stations that run these sort of experiments, stations that do this sort of innovation, do they end up better off in the long run than those that stick with some of the tried and true methods? Alex, I'm going to put you on the spot to say maybe, and then maybe we all gang up on you and say, you should build that.
I'll say all of that all at once. So like I was saying, right? Take small risks if you can only take a small risk. Don't stop doing your broadcast fund drives or, your social media, outreach, you don't have to stop doing that. You can appropriately size the risks that you take. And it's easy, right? Like if you're talking about a loyalty program, to me, actually, that does sound like a lot of work, but if you have a lot of people who are asking for it, or if there's something in the market that's similar and it's a concept that your listeners and viewers are familiar with, that they do a lot anyway, then that's worth it. I'm certain that you could probably track a station over several years and come up with some model to see whether it's working or not. But I would say that if you keep doing the same thing, then you're probably not going to grow the same as stations who may take risks. Obviously, that's not based on data, but if you're not taking risks, then you're not reaching new people, or you're not retaining these new people who are coming.
We want to be cognizant of time. We're getting up towards the top of the hour, and we know many of our guests have to bail out. As for myself, I'm happy to stick around and keep the conversation going, just recognizing that some of the attendees may have to go do other things. There was one thing that kept flying by in the chat that I wanted to make sure we got back to, which is, there's lots of data out there. CDP's published some stuff in Current. I think, Christina, one of your slides alluded to this, and we've all talked offline about the donors coming in during this rescission bump are tending to be significantly younger than our traditional cohorts. Yeah. Thoughts, Christina, about how do we stay engaged with those people? What might we do to make sure that this wasn't just a one-time expression of love that we're not able to turn into long-term, customer lifetime value? What are some of the things you and your team are thinking about?
So I want to say we are seeing this across sectors. So outside of public media, we are seeing these kinds of I would call them disaster fundraising in some ways. And the reason I call them that is because I started out with the Red Cross during Haiti and a couple of those other things. And we had disaster donors who would make those gifts in mass, passionate gifts. And then you would go 2 months down the road, 6 months down the road, and the organization would sort of write them off and not contact them anymore, not flow them into the regular fundraising processes. And you'd get 5 years down the road and those people had not been contacted in years. Please do the opposite of that. Please continue contacting these people, these young audiences who are giving now in this time of urgent fundraising or disaster fundraising or whatever you want to label it. May continue to give because they care about your mission. So flow them into your normal processes. That's what we're recommending to all of the other types of nonprofits we work with. Don't let these people go. They may not give another donation for 10 years because they don't have the disposable income at this time to do so, especially if they're a younger donor. It doesn't mean they should ever be off your file. Keep working on them.
That's excellent. There's a lot more I could ask. In fact, I'm intrigued about whether you flow them into your regular flow, whether you set up a separate one, but we are at time, and Chad is nagging us, darn him, keeping us accountable to start to wrap things up. This has been a fantastic session. I asked a bunch of what-if questions of Chad and Amber and David a few weeks ago, and it turned into something that was, beyond my hopes in terms of just thoughtful and inspiring conversations. I'm thrilled to have been even a part of it, and I want to express my personal thanks to Christina, to Tyler, to Alex for their ideas and their enthusiasm, as well as to all of you who attended, because you guys are doing the hard work each and every day in tough times out at stations. Thank you for what you're doing. Chad, appreciate your hosting us. I'll turn it back to you to wrap up.
Thank you. There were some questions of whether we will have this recording available. We will have this recording available. So look for that. Amber just stuck the link in the chat. Sometimes we email the links out too, don't we, Amber? So if you were registered, you might also find it in your inbox. Thank you for the feedback. It's the first time that we at PMI have tried to do a sort of development revenue topic, and we were not sure what the response would be. But seeing that sort of late in the webinar kind of boom of chat activity was really heartening. So we'll keep that in mind. Thank you, Tom. Alex, Tyler, Christina, again, much appreciated. Thanks to Mike and Karen at Current. Thanks to Nita. Our next webinar will be November 20th. And I believe we will have, oh, there's the link. Thank you, Amber. Always prompt with that. And then our next Innovate with Current webinar is slotted for January. And so look for that announcement to come out probably mid-November. So everyone have a great rest of your October. And yeah, hang in there.